Guys, go ahead and click off of this channel. You probably found it by mistake. I promise you that if you hang out long enough, you are going to be offended.
So, what exactly are you trying to accomplish here?
Welcome back everyone to Bridge the Divide, where I examine irrational beliefs, the irrational behaviors that often follow, and how we, with education, rationality, and reason, can bridge the societal divides that they create. Today, we're going to take a look at a video from this guy over on the channel Eternal Insecurity. Now, for those of you who may not know what that particular phrase refers to, essentially, the guy who runs this channel does not hold to the Calvinistic concept of once saved, always saved that many Baptist and Presbyterians hold to today, and he firmly believes that faith in Christ is meant to be a strict moment-to-moment lifelong position of adherence, and the loss of that faith will result in the loss of one's salvation and their immediate condemnation to hell. This of course stands out as one of the major ways this particular blend of Christianity establishes a fear-based stranglehold on the behavior of its members and thus retains its authoritarian control over their lives and their money. Beyond that, the thus far nameless host of this channel creates videos on biblical interpretation, addressing various popular public figures, and spreading his own denomination's particular agenda. But out of all of that, it was this video of his that really got my attention, because in it, he makes a really impressive claim with some far-reaching implications regarding the God that he believes in. So let's dive in, see what, if anything, he has to present, and if he's truly going to shake the very pillars of the non-theistic worldview.
I am going to give you 100% proof that God is real. I'm going to give you scientific proof, rational proof, and even the opportunity to test this with me.
Well, I have to say, sir, that is mighty impressive. I mean, not only do you supposedly have the evidence that your particular God exists, but you've also implied that you have a scientific demonstration that, of course, anyone out there can do, in which the result will be that your God exists. Of course, given the monumental nature of the claim that you're making here, I do have to ask one obvious question. Why exactly are you putting this thing on a YouTube channel with less than 300 subscribers, when a repeatable scientific experiment that demonstrates the existence of the God that you believe in would absolutely net you a Nobel Prize? But hey, to each their own, I guess. So what exactly is this evidence and the experiment that anyone can do that demonstrates the existence of your God?
So as I give you all this, some of you are going to reject it just out of personal bias.
No, we're going to reject it for a few reasons. First, because what you're claiming you have, which is an experiment that demonstrates the existence of the God that you believe in, would probably be the greatest discovery in the history of humankind. Second, because you're putting this thing out on YouTube instead of submitting your process for peer review to every single journal around the world. And third, because every single human being who has made this exact same claim before you have all come up short, because what they ultimately end up presenting is either a straw man, or begging the question, or an appeal to emotion, or an argument from incredulity, or an argument from ignorance. Like the great Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And he didn't even mention the rigorous independent verification process there. So before you poison the well by dictating to other people what they're thinking or feeling, how about you just bring the goods and allow the methodology that we have cultivated over the better part of the last 10,000 years to do its job? And as a side note, I hope you realize how insanely ironic it is that instead of jumping right into your groundbreaking demonstration, you chose to preface your entire presentation by referencing what you think is the unjustified personal bias of others, when you holding the automatic assumption that non-believers will possess such a bias is in and of itself your personal bias. And if the reason you've convinced yourself not to submit any of your world-shattering work for peer review is because you believe, first, you cannot possibly be wrong, and second, that if the independent review process were to demonstrate that your conclusions are completely unfounded, and that could only be because all of the reviewers are holding this deep-seated personal bias against your position, then all you've really succeeded in doing here is to expose the heights of your arrogance and the irrational depths of your persecution complex.
Hold on, let me give you the proof.
Better buckle up, atheists, because here it comes. Get ready to shift your worldviews.
Hit me.
The harbor seal.
I'm sorry, what?
The harbor seal.
Like the seal? The animal?
The harbor seal.
The harbor seal is your evidence.
You know, the mammal that swims around.
Yeah, this guy right here. I figured that's what you meant when the words harbor seal came out of your mouth.
It's got some flippers on it. It's got some tusks.
Whoa there, hold up, boss. Yes, the harbor seal, like all pinnipeds, which are semi-aquatic, have flippers, but it is only the noble walrus who possesses tusks. So, either you are obliquely referring to all pinnipeds in general as your evidence, or you didn't do any actual research into the harbor seal itself. Which would of course demand the question, if you didn't even bother to thoroughly research which seal you're talking about, then how the hell do you know that anything about the animal is evidence for your god?
It's got some whiskers, jumps in the water, typically lives along the coastline, etc.
Okay, you firmly established that while you mentioned the harbor seal specifically, what you're likely talking about are pinnipeds in general. So, what is it exactly about these semi-aquatic, carnivorous, innocent puppy dog-eyed mammals that you think is evidence for your god?
The seal can jump into water and sense where a fish was 35 seconds ago, or when it's 200 yards away.
Ah, I see someone's been spending their quality time with either the Journal of Experimental Biology, where this article about researchers testing the sensitivity of harbor seal whiskers when it came to tracking hydrodynamic trails left by passing fish was published back in 2010, or you've been visiting the Institute for Creation Research's website, and you're referencing their article that grossly misrepresents that previous article in a dishonest effort to push their pseudoscience narrative. I'll give the audience two guesses, but they'll probably only need one. Spoiler alert, it's the one that I kid you not lists Genesis 1:20 as an official citation. So, to sum up where we are really quick, we've got a claim of direct evidence and a repeatable demonstration, prefaced with an expressed personal bias against anyone who might critically review that claim, and a citation of a non-peer-reviewed misrepresentation of a 14-year-old study of seal whiskers that was put out by a group that unironically uses the Bible as an official reference for their articles. I'm sorry to say I don't think this is going to go the way you think it will.
That is stupendous proof that God exists.
You serious?
So, I could respond to that statement in a number of ways, but I think I'll take the more gentle approach this time. How exactly is the sensitivity of seal whiskers evidence for not only the existence of a god, but the existence of your specific god? That is, of course, assuming that you fully understand pinniped evolution and this is not all just your personal incredulity.
Now some of you are like, oh, you stupid Christian, what is wrong with you?
So there's that personal bias again. Once again, instead of assuming what we're thinking or what we're going to say, how about you just demonstrate the mechanistic connection between your god and pinniped evolution?
God exists because there's something super duper about the natural order. I mean, we can explain all this scientifically.
Well, you're not wrong about that. The evidence that allows us to track pinniped evolution goes back around 23 million years to the Miocene, and takes us to these two extinct organisms, Potamotherium, which was a basal, non-marine ancestor to today's pinnipeds, and Analiarctos, which is universally agreed to be the semi-aquatic ancestor to all pinnipeds. Now, the fossils that we have found of Potamotherium are remarkably intact thanks to the environment that preserved them. In fact, they're in such good condition that researchers were able to produce digital endocasts of their skulls, which revealed two very important things. One, that their brains were virtually identical to their Analiarctos cousins, and two, that these particular animals possessed a broad, vertically oriented coronal gyrus, which is a fold on the lateral surface of the brain. And the carnivorans today with the largest coronal gyri are freshwater foragers like the otter civet, and all modern-day pinnipeds, which are mammals that uniquely utilize highly sensitive whiskers for both foraging and hunting.
Yes, science!
So the direct evidence indicates that the highly sensitive, large, thick whiskers of all modern-day pinnipeds, like the harbor seal, are a result of over 20 million years of evolution. And by the way, since we're so heavy on the science track,
more input.
I'll just throw out that sharks and other cartilaginous fish have something kind of similar in what are called ampullae of Lorenzini, which are electroreceptors connected to the pores in the skin around their mouths and their noses, which allows them to detect electrical fields, and aid these predatory fish in both hunting and navigating. Now, the whole reason I brought all of this up is because the sensitivity of the ampullae of Lorenzini make the sensitivity of pinniped whiskers look childish by comparison, as sharks have an electrical field detection detection threshold of sensitivity as low as 5 nanovolts per centimeter. So honestly, dude, if you wanted to go with something really impressive, maybe you should have gone with sharks instead. I mean, not only do sharks possess over 200 million years of evolution over pinnipeds, but at least then you could have added some cool-ass clips to your video. You know, to distract from the fact that it looks like you recorded this in the stockroom of an abandoned Earthbound.
Yeah, but see, it's not the science part that is the proof. It's actually the application and the contrast of something different.
Application and contrast from something different? Given that we understand the biology of mammal whiskers in general, we understand the specific evolutionary development of pinniped whiskers, and we understand the specialized function of pinniped whiskers, I'm not sure what you mean by the contrast from something different, given that we're talking about a single clade of mammals with their own specific evolutionary track.
You see, there is a scientific explanation. The seal has a ton of neurological sensors in its whiskers.
Yeah, we know this. And we also know that the nerves connected to whiskers that allow them to function as sense organs is a common feature in virtually all mammals, including cats, dogs, rodents, pigs, and mustelids.
And I'm just going to make up some figures here.
So, in your demonstrable and testable scientific evidence for the existence of your god, you're now going to make up some figures. I don't think I really need to say just how unscientific that is.
I'm recalling off the top of my head, maybe it's right.
Do you want to get a pen and paper and write it down? There's no shame in that.
You know, you could have used that opposable thumb that our species evolved with to pick up a writing utensil and jot all of this down. Pretty much every grade school student understands that science involves a lot of note-taking. And that's so, you know, you don't have to make shit up on the fly in your presentations.
But about 150,000 sensors to what, the cat's 2,000 sensors?
Yeah, you should have taken notes. Cat whiskers have some 200 nerve endings, which makes them about as sensitive as human fingertips. Harbor seal whiskers, however, have upwards of 1,500 nerve endings, which, it goes without saying, makes them exceedingly more sensitive. So next time, just write it down.
That's what I remember in the article.
And you remembered it completely wrong. But don't worry, I'm certain your inability to accurately research your subjects as it pertains to the evidence they provide for your external deity figure existing in reality won't affect your conclusions at all.
Somehow I doubt that.
So it can be explained why the seal can jump into the water and sense where a fish was 35 seconds back.
Yeah, it's called evolution. Where's the evidence that leads to your god?
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it! Get on with it!
Because why? The water is still turbulent and the seal's micro receptors can still sense which direction the fish swam and chased after it.
Still not telling us anything that isn't in that JBE article or misrepresented in that ICR article. Come on, man, get to the evidence. I took the time to read that entire article over at the ICR's website, and I understand how they misrepresented that data to push their narrative. Now I really want to see if you're just going to pull a Matt Powell and regurgitate that information as though it was your own.
But that's not the miracle part.
Wait, hang on a sec, there's miracles involved now? Well, if you're going to cite something as a miracle, you need to parse out exactly what your parameters for a miracle are. Is it a phenomenon that literally violates the laws of physics? Is it a phenomenon that's just really, really rare? Does the coincidental or fortuitous timing of such an event factor into your parameters? And by what critical methodology are you able to determine the difference between a coincidental rare event and an actual miracle? These are important questions that must be answered so that we can be sure that what you're identifying as miraculous is really not just your ignorance-fueled personal incredulity talking.
The miracle part is that you couldn't do that.
Well, yeah, I'm not a freaking seal. I don't have vibrissae growing out of my face. I don't forage in the ocean for fish and crustaceans. I don't have innocent puppy dog eyes and speak only in the language of love and laughter. Oh wait, my apologies. The classic Ridley Scott movie Legend is currently free on YouTube and you know I had to watch it again. Wait, hang on a second. Did you mean I can't do that as in I can't create something that does something similar to what seal whiskers do? Well, if that's what you meant, then I beg to differ with you, sir, because as of 2016, engineers at MIT are already copying the structure and function of seal whiskers in efforts to develop better underwater sensors.
You could not jump into the water blindfolded like they had the seal doing, jump into the water and chase after the fish because you don't possess those receptors.
Oh, you were literally saying that I can't do it because I myself am not a seal.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Now I know some of you are like, what are you, like you're an idiot.
That is now the second time that you've tattled on yourself. Honestly, your lack of self-awareness is quickly approaching Darth Dawkins proportions.
Comparing apples to oranges, humans to seals?
Yeah, that is in fact a pretty silly thing to do. Thus, I don't really know why you think it's a good move. Your evidence, if we're ever going to get to it, must be truly extraordinary.
But let's think about something for a second.
If a lack of self-awareness could reach a critical mass, I'm pretty sure we just crossed it.
I'm going to jump to your side of the fence.
Why? You were talking about seal whiskers here. You pointed to seal whiskers as either being or being related to the testable evidence that demonstrates the existence of your god.
Now is not the time to lose thy nerve!
And we're going to come from a biological angle, from the evolutionary tree, and we're just going to jump to that side and just be, all rational about this, right?
Let me be the one to tell you. That tone of derisive incredulity is not doing you or your quickly crumbling position any favors.
So, you're an animal?
Yep, we humans are categorized as animals.
And the seal is an animal?
Yep, seals are also animals. And just in case you didn't know, we're also both chordates and mammals. But that's where we break off, because pinnipeds are in the order Carnivora, and we humans are in the order Primates. Welcome to basic taxonomy.
And, we've kind of developed, and you're like, oh, we might not be in the same exact branch.
I'm pretty sure you were about to say branch right there before you cut yourself off. The word you were probably looking for is order. Pinnipeds and primates are not in the same order.
Yeah, but the point being is that animals or humans all don't develop equally and all don't have the same capacities or abilities, now do they?
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Okay, seriously, is this going anywhere? Is your testable evidence located anywhere within this meandering miasma that you call a presentation?
You see, not every human grasped the same intellectual concepts.
You ain't just whistling Dixie!
So we know there is some sensation there or some ideas there, or some kind of power there that some humans have that others do not.
I swear this is like watching someone flail like they're drowning in water that they could easily stand up in.
We also know that humans don't have the same emotional quotients.
What the hell does that have to do with anything?
They don't grasp the same feelings of others and the same vibes of others, etc. We also know that human beings don't have the same
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
micro transmitters or whatever in their hands. I don't know what controls the micro functions of the hand, but
This went to shit fast.
your music and extreme artist performance, who are the world's greatest, they have more control of their hands than the average person. This is noted in the Watchmaker as well.
You didn't see that coming?
So you've managed to meander your way from harbor seal whiskers to the watchmaker analogy, which, by my estimation, implies that you think that the sensitivity of harbor seal whiskers is so phenomenally impressive, despite the fact that they're not even remotely close to the most impressive sense organs possessed by other animals, that they only could have been designed by a creator. Please tell me that what you think is your testable evidence for your god is not just another logical fallacy. At this point, we're going to jump ahead just a little bit because he just repeats the same claim, but this time he cites competitive gamers and people with highly sensitive palates.
Some of you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, we do. And it's nowhere even remotely rational.
Are there God sensors?
So, I have to admit, I wasn't actually prepared for that question, because that question, when you break it down, is actually kind of scientific. Given the phenomena that so many people around the world have a tendency to believe in God concepts, that could potentially lead someone to conclude that humans may have something of a God receptor within them. The only problem is we can't test anything within our biology to determine if it is a natural God receptor, which would essentially be a biological to supernatural interface, because we don't know anything about the God subject that's supposed to be independently detectable. Everything that theists assert about their particular deities comes from within themselves, their feelings, their intuitions, and their own specific indoctrinations. So unfortunately, there exists no methodology to determine the difference between a coerced or indoctrinated subjective experience experience and something actually coming from a god. But since he brought it up, I would really like to know what he thinks are the natural god receptors in human biology.
Now see, right now when I told you about that testability portion of whether God exists or not,
Well, it certainly took you long enough.
some of you have had the God sensors go off.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
I'm sorry. I had no idea that you had direct and special access to my internal biology and my mental states. Please tell me what aspect of my biology goes off when detecting your god. That is other than my bullshit meter.
Yeah. You've experienced that twinge that, oh, this guy is right.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about some kind of emotional response? Because for me to have any kind of emotional response about you being correct in any way would kind of necessitate me believing that your god could, at a bare minimum, logically exist. Which, seeing as how the entire conceptualization is a literal cornucopia of irrational reasoning, I certainly do not.
But let's turn that off.
Well, hang on a second. You have yet to specify exactly what my god receptor is or even how it mechanistically interfaces with the supernatural, so how can I possibly know how to turn it off?
It's not that God doesn't exist or that your sensors aren't working. These nano sensors, these micro sensors that scream and give you some realization that God does exist.
I'm really starting to think that you don't have a freaking clue about anything regarding human anatomy.
We have been ignoring those.
While we can, to a degree, ignore certain stimuli that our bodies intake by controlling our voluntary responses to that stimuli, to specifically conclude what you're concluding would mean that we would have to identify the specific stimuli, then we would have to identify which specific sensory organ is picking up that stimuli, and then we would have to demonstrate the mechanistic relationship between your god, the stimuli, and the sense organ that's picking it up. But hang on a sec, because we actually skipped a step. There is one thing that you would have to do before you can do any of that previous stuff I just mentioned, and that would be you demonstrating that your god actually exists in the first place. It would also help if you could eliminate the logical possibility that your interpretation of various emotional stimuli is evidence for your god, because that's what you've been conditioned to do over the course of your lifetime. It's really starting to look like you've got your work cut out for you.
So, I've offered you the scientific proof.
No, you haven't. You cited things that exist in reality, you cited detectable phenomena that are related to those things, and then you assumed your god exists as an explanation for those phenomena out of sheer incredulity.
That not all human beings or mammals are the same.
Believe me when I say, you didn't have to make a 6-minute video to convince anyone of that.
That some sense things that others do not.
Sure, some people are more sensitive to various stimuli than others. Some people respond more emotionally to stimuli than others. But that's not evidence of your god existing. That's just evidence of you being conditioned to interpret evolutionary-driven sensitivity to various stimuli as evidence for your god.
And so this should kind of take us down the path of wondering, like,
there's a lot of things that I could wonder about the course of a life that led someone to where you currently are.
If I'm not sensing God, but 80% of the world is sensing that there is some sort of God,
that some massive percentage of the population believes that some form of a god exists is itself in no way evidence that a god exists. It's only evidence that they believe a god exists because they've been taught, conditioned, or manipulated into believing a god exists. Ultimately, this is nothing but an argument from popularity.
Maybe I should logically think about this more.
I did. That's how I know it's an argument from popularity.
And here's what I challenge you with. If you will be 100% honest with yourself.
Really? You're gonna sit there and claim that you have special access to my mind and then commit fallacy after fallacy after fallacy, and then presume that I, as an atheist, cannot be honest with myself.
Boy, you must be outside your mind.
And you will be 100% rational and put your bias on the back burner, and that's hard to do.
Oh, I know. That's why the road of my deconstruction and deconversion took over a decade. It's really hard to let go of the crap that you were psychologically abused into believing when you were young.
It is hard to set the pride aside and just be intellectual about something.
You mean like your phenomenal arrogance in thinking that you have special access to the mental states of others because some ancient book says you do? Or how you think everyone who claims that they don't believe what you believe actually does in fact believe it, they're just lying to themselves and everyone else. That kind of anti-intellectual pride?
But if you'll be 100% honest and you'll be 100% rational, It will only take you to one place, and it is the truth that
The only way to get to a God conclusion is to commit a boatload of logical fallacies and have the arrogance and lack of self-awareness to claim that everyone who doesn't buy what you're selling is just lying to themselves and subservient to their biases, while simultaneously succumbing to your own personal bias and ignoring the logical possibility that you could be wrong about all of it. And with that, we're going to conclude this look at this guy's rambling and fallacious presentation about his God. And while listening to that entire spiel, while giving him the benefit of the doubt, despite suspecting exactly where it was going to end up was difficult, the real difficulty comes in trying to bridge the divide with individuals indoctrinated to the point that logical fallacies appear completely logical. And while the initial inclination may be to simply turn away, that you'll never be able to make an impression because they simply will not listen, it's important to remember not to assume the extent to which someone will not respond to legitimate criticism. Everyone has a different threshold, and until these conversations are explored, we'll never know exactly what a person will or will not respond to. The best option that I can recommend is to always keep in mind which side of the argument the truth is on, and compassionately remind oneself that individuals that are as entrenched as this person is are themselves victims of their indoctrination. When this happens to be the case, often the best that we can do is help the individual identify a problem that they may not even realize exists so that they can have the opportunity to acknowledge it, and then remind them that there is help, support, and a wide array of resources that are readily available to them should they ever feel they need it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And be sure to leave a comment below. I love reading your responses, and those interactions help with the dreaded algorithm. Don't forget, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. A link to where you can support these important efforts is down in the description. And if you love scary movies, be sure to check out me and my filmmaker friends over at the Week in Horror podcast, now in our 5th season. Everything you need to become a channel member here, get yourself some official Bridge the Divide gear, or support the podcast is down in the description. Once again, a massive thank you to each and every single one of you for your continued support of this channel, and as always, be safe, be excellent to each other, and together, we can bridge the divide.